Before we get going into your Hockey IQ podcast episode, I want to thank our sponsor, Rapid Shot. Rapid Shot is the smart shooting lane. It's like a batting cage for hockey players. Very cool. Tracks your shot in 3 ways: accuracy, shot speed, and reaction time. Easy to use. Actually, I used it when I played and was growing up. Very easy. Simply scan your phone in, select your settings, and start shooting. You can see your stats on the app and online. You can check them out at rapidshot.com. Great small business. I actually grew up with one of the owner's sons and have played with all the family members by now, just in local pickups here in Ohio. Very cool local business. Awesome product. I love it. I know quite a few NHLers have them in their homes. A lot of D1 programs have it at their rinks. So you have to check this out. Rapidshot.com. Check it out. Rapid Shot, thank you so much for sponsoring our podcast. On the Hockey IQ podcast today, we bring on Tomas Pacina. 30 plus years in hockey, Tomas. How's it been? How are you? Thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much. It's been a month of rest and reflection for me. I've stepped down as the head coach of the Czech women's national team over a month ago, and just enjoying some time off and using it to reflect and to study and see what's the newest out there in hockey coaching and skills coaching and team tactics, and sort of reflect a little bit back on my life as a coach.
I think that's the perfect time to catch you to record a podcast. Love that reflective state. We always are trying to create it in our players so they can further their development. So even though you've had 30 amazing years, I believe that you probably have a few more ahead of you once you're well rested up and enjoy some good study time.
Thank you. I hope so too.
So let's rewind a little bit. So you're originally from the Czech Republic, but then you jumped over to North America at some point and had a long career in skills coaching. And really, I feel like you were one of the first people to do this full time at a very, very high level. So if you wouldn't mind maybe going back to the beginning and giving us a little story of how you came to the North American continent and stayed here for quite some time before heading back over to take over the Czech women's program.
Yeah, so I started coaching in Germany. I was about 22 years old, and I played a little bit of hockey in junior in Germany after having career in tennis and swimming and skiing, and starting with hockey as a little kid. So I was as an athlete, I had a multi-dimensional career, and then hockey was always my biggest love, biggest passion. So I started with little tiny kids, 4 or 5 years old beginners in Germany. But my dream was always to go to North America and to learn from the best coaches in the world. And so in '94, I left Germany after about 3-4 years of coaching and became, AAA midget coach in Calgary, Canada. Was able to guest coach with the Calgary Flames and Dave King, who was one of my most influential mentors, and started to do more individual sessions that sort of came very accidentally, if you will. Was at the sports school working with 12 kids that had ice hockey every day with me on the ice, but were never playing for a team at the school. They had their own teams after school. So I was not able to work on any tactics or any forechecking, any breakouts, anything like that. So I had to figure out what to work on with those kids. So that was in 95, 96, I think. And so coming back from the Czech and Russian school of hockey, where individual skills were always very important, even in the 50s and 60s and 70s of the last century, and coming from individual sports as tennis and skiing, I always felt that there's a need in hockey to work with the players, not only on the team stuff, but also develop them individually. And so for me, it was a natural nag that I already had. I was always looking at the movement of the player, and I always thought, how can I help this player to become more efficient? And that was those were sort of the beginnings of the skills coaching. There was always power skating coaches in Canada, long history of power skating coaches, but skills coaches that would work on shooting and deception and different kind of moves, and which we today is absolutely the norm. That was in the 90s, in the mid 90s. That was not the order of the day back then.
So you started in Calgary. You had Dave King as a mentor. So what were maybe some things that Dave King taught you in your younger years, and were there other people in those beginning years that helped you start, and maybe some of those pieces that you took away?
Yeah. Dave King and Wally Kozak, extremely instrumental in the beginning. Just the way they taught the game, the way they were teaching on the ice. I remember Wally and Dave being very, very detailed when they were presenting the drills. They always had teaching points in every drill, which was, I was used to, just write a drill and this is what you do, A, B, C, D. But Dave and Wally, they were both great teachers. So there was always a detail. And whenever it was a passing drill or shooting drill or defensive drill, defensive skating, whatever it was always attention to detail, top hand here, bottom hand here. You want to stop with one foot and the other foot is here. And so it was very influential on me, the details they have asked the players. And they were both team coaches. Dave King was coaching the men's national team, and then later on, when I met him, the Calgary Flames. And I remember him running practices at the Saddle Dome and sitting in the stands and just listening to his voice, how he was detailed, and how he didn't allow the players to just go through the drill. He wanted certain things to be seen in the drill, and he followed on it. And as well, I liked when he gave feedback, he was very specific. He didn't just say, hey, good job, or I like this. He says, the way you pull the puck between your legs, or the way you shot there, or the way you came back on this drill on the back check. He was very specific. And I think when we are very specific with our feedback, it makes the players feel good. It's just like, okay, coach notices. And I think those were sort of the first two guys in Canada who really, really influenced the way I run drills, the way I give feedback, and the way I communicate with players.
Giving specific feedback, I really enjoy that. It's the first thing I always tell my assistant coaches that we need to do, because I always hate, you need to be harder on pucks. Okay, well, how do we need to do that? I'm more curious about the how. So, okay, I feel like I'm on the right track there. So that's excellent. And you talked about how you go about running drills. I'm curious what that meant, or what that means to you about shaping the drill differently than maybe you had before, to incorporate skills or be very specific in what you're teaching to make sure that you're being the best teacher and allowing the students to learn best.
That has evolved over the years, of course. I mean, like I said, from Dave and Wally, I learned that there's got to be a teaching point, whether it's regarding timing or skating or saving ice or whatever it is. But as I have evolved as a skills coach, I've tried to incorporate skill into regular team drills. So let's say when we go back for the puck to the corner, let's make sure we have a good shoulder check. Okay, how do we shoulder check? And then when I started incorporating that, I realized before I do a team drill or a group drill, I need to warm up that skill. I need to introduce that skill, let's say shoulder check, into the warm-up. So if I would do a warm-up and there would be a game, I would say, okay, so now we're just going to play one-on-one. I'm going to dump the puck in, but first thing you guys have to do is a shoulder check before we get to the puck. So I started, before I introduced the skill, I knew I need to warm it up. I need to introduce it before I show it in a complicated or more of a team drill. And so that has influenced how I run my practices. And then it evolved into, I want to show a video before I start practice. So let's say today we're going to work on breakouts. That means we gotta go for pucks first. So I'm gonna show some video how the best players in the world are doing it. And so when the players come to practice and they step on the ice, they already have an idea what is expected of them. So it has evolved over the years, where today with the national team, when I think back, we had a 1 or 2 themes for one practice, and the girls have seen a video. They have seen how other teams are doing it, how Tampa Bay is doing it. They've seen themselves, how they do it. And the first thing when we come on the ice, there's already an element of what we're going to work on. And then we just add players, we add pressure, we add maybe more people. But the whole practice is about 1 or maximum 2 themes, which is very different than when I started 30 years ago. I would maybe work on 4 or 5 different things. And now it's more focused. Let's work on one thing and let's work on it really deep, so that when we leave the ice, we really have a feeling we have accomplished something. And I have to say, Mike Johnston from Portland Winterhawks, who I've worked with for 11 years, he's been absolutely instrumental in helping me in realizing that, not only in skill work, but also in teamwork, to be focused on 1, maximum 2 things in one practice and really accomplish something.
All right. So we should not do practices that have an element of this, a little element of that. We want to make sure we hit the entire buffet. We should maybe focus, go to the specific steakhouse, worry about perfecting our steak making abilities, to make an analogy there.
I'll take it even further. We were playing in Finland, and Finland is one of the best countries in developing young players, and they are winning a lot, whether it's women or men, on international field. And I remember now in November, I talked with the coaches. I said how they practice during the year. And they said, well, we would pick a theme, like let's say defensive work, defensive skating, defensive stick work, surfing and stick on puck and stops and starts and body positioning and so on and so on. And we work on it for 5 weeks. We have 5-week segments. So not just one practice, it's 5 weeks. 5 weeks work on just defensive work. And I mean, there's a lot of components to defensive work, but the players, whether it's in club level or national team level, they just get hit with one thing, and then they work on offensive concepts, let's say entering the zone. And yes, there's many, many different things you have to work on, but the players are not overwhelmed with too many things. It's just one thing. And you because it's a one thing, you can go deep into it. My mistake as a young coach was that I would be touching on everything, but it would always be on surface. And if I give you a task for the next 2 weeks, every single day, just gonna work on going back for the pucks into the corner, automatically, by doing that, you will see, oh, wow, he could turn his toes this way, but when the pressure is closer, he cannot do this. He's got to do something else. Oh, wow, when he has got lots of time, he doesn't have to do it. He can take the puck behind the net. Automatically, as a coach, because you do just one thing, you will go deeper and deeper and deeper, and therefore it will have a way more solid foundation than if we just touch on things a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here.
Fascinating. I'd love to hear how you evolved through time, because I feel like you just don't hear about that anymore. You hear about where people are currently and not all of the ways that we've tried in the past. So going back and kind of weaving this into your path. So you started with the New York Rangers as a skills coach, and as well, I believe Team Canada before then. And then you were working on the women's side as well. So you started doing some individuals, and then you had some teamwork. When you were doing both at the same time, I'm curious how that interlocked, because I feel like it's very much different if you always start as a head coach and you see nothing but big picture versus starting as a skills coach and then seeing the big picture. I'm curious how that evolved for you, or how that shaped your vision for how you go about creating teams.
It's a different look, different perception, and yet at times it was overwhelming in a way that when I was coaching the team, and I had some of the best players in the world. I had Danielle Goyette, Haley Wickenheiser, and Cassie Campbell, not to forget. Most of them now in the Hockey Hall of Fame. And I had a vision how we want to play the game. And then yet at the same time, I saw the deficiencies in the skill. And then when I was working with some of the NHL players, I realized, yes, I can work with them on skills. However, there is a tactical component that I have to incorporate as well. So today, I'm extremely grateful for the experience that I had. I was able to see the game from both sides. Back then, it was always a process of sorting out, okay, so what is the most important thing today? What is the absolute essential thing I need to work on today in terms of a team perspective? But also, and I go back to that always, is that once you have a philosophy with the team, you have to know what skills you need to use to have that philosophy. So we always been a puck possession team. So one of the things that you need for that is obviously passing and receiving, but at the same time, incredible great skating, because you need to constantly skate into support. You have to be actively in support positions. And naturally out of that, when you get the puck, you need to have a phenomenal puck protection skills to keep the puck. So the way I was coaching and my philosophy in puck possession was always determining the skills that I need to work on. Now with the players, when I work with them only individually, it depending on the needs of the players. I'm thinking now about Jerome Iginla when we worked together for about 4 years. One of his needs was lateral movement, and he wanted to be able to escape from situations, from checkers, from defenders to the side, to the left, to the right, to his backhand, to his forehand. And one of his deficiencies back then was he was not able to use his outside edge very well. He was a very, very balanced, centered skater on his inside edges. So for him to be able to move laterally, we had to work on his outside edges. And it's interesting how work with little kids, with 5-6-year-old kids, when you think of them, they're always on the inside edges. And introducing them to the outside edge and feeling the outside edge helped me in helping some of the best players in the world. And once we have got Jerome very, very comfortable on his outside edges and using it for the lateral crossover, not the linear crossover that everybody's using now. We haven't worked on that yet, but lateral crossover, he was able to fake one way and escape to the other side. And with the help of the crossover, he was able to achieve some separation.
I feel like the outside edge is always the most underdeveloped edge in skating. So yeah, I'm assuming you've heard of the A-frame before.
Yes.
A-frame skating. So I'm curious.
You mean the tripod? I'm
yes.
centered.
Yeah, tripod A-frame.
And I have the puck in front of the body.
Yes, I think we should dive in a little bit deeper on that. Obviously, we cover please. A lot of knowledge, but I mean that one's something particular that I think people don't realize until it's too late. If you're self-diagnosing your own game, or if you're coaching, if you don't realize it early enough, you don't understand how important it is to get out of that shape and out of that location where it's super inside edge dominant, and how that really boxes players into certain movement patterns that are going to be inefficient, or they have to move, and now they've got problems escaping pressure, and it just leads to a bunch of issues. So I'm curious from your perspective what your thoughts are on that, maybe some solves to that.
Well, you have spoken about something I have, unfortunately, with not so much success preached here. Maybe I was not supposed to preach it. Had to find a different way of communication. But when you look at youth hockey in Czech Republic, this would be probably, in terms of skill, in terms of individual tactic, in terms of viewing the game, probably the biggest weakness. Handling the puck in front of me between the legs and being on the inside edges. We call the position, either somebody calls it stuck, Somebody calls it dead in the water. Somebody calls it centered. To me, one of the biggest issues, biggest weaknesses overall. The way I have approached it last 30 years is I was always doing, whenever I did some skating work, I was always doing it on one foot. So inside edges, outside edges, with the puck, without the puck, puck handling and faking is always 1 foot. So players realize that the game of hockey or the way I skate, it's always I'm either on the left foot or I'm either on the right foot, and that will also impact the puck placement. Where is the puck? So it needs to be either on my forehand, beside my I'm a lefty, beside my left foot, or it's got to be on the backhand beside my right foot if I'm a left-handed shot. That allows me, of course, to either shoot, pass, or make a move. And of course, once I'm on the outside inside edge, it allows me to turn back, to cut back, to have some escapability, some movement. So my approach, again, a lot of one-footed, a lot of weight shift drills. I remember with Portland Winterhawks was one of the things that Mike Johnston always wanted from me is like every player needs to be able to escape. So that means weight shift, and from the weight shift being able to cross over and jump to the other side with puck first movement, to the forehand, to the backhand, no matter whether you're defenseman or a forward. And you see even today in the NHL, as soon as they put both feet on the ice inside edge, all they can do is pass the puck. And usually, and if it's on their backhand, it's a weak backhand, and the forecheck jumps on it and there's a turnover. I just watched a few clips the other day. The moment the defenseman goes into the tripod position, he is like what do you call it, lame duck?
Dead in the water.
You basically have stopped playing. And the other problem with that is that most people don't talk about. You move as a unit of 5, constantly moving as a unit of 5. Watch a hockey game and watch the puck carrier go into that tripod A-frame position, and you will see how it deactivates everybody else. Because we are connected. There's a connection between 5 players. And when the one with the puck stops moving, everybody is sort of in a very, very passive position. Now, when the puck carrier starts moving and there is a crossover, linear, lateral, doesn't matter, there's a movement, it activates everybody else around. So it has an impact. The puck carrier has impact on everybody else.
Fascinating stuff there. I really like this conversation, and I want to go a little bit deeper on an element you mentioned here about puck first movement and affecting puck placement. So if we're talking about puck placement, I think this may lead us down the path of how can we use puck placement to teach skating, because I think that would be something probably very few have thought about, but is very, very effective when you talk about using puck placement to then influence skating. Just simply taking the puck out from being between your feet to outside, or sliding a puck into an area, and now your feet have to go get that.
Yeah, so of course it's something that people like Darryl and people who are very well advanced have been using it for quite time. Again, I personally was using it instinctively. I was never calling it puck placement. I always called it let the puck travel. So players who used to work with me, they knew that let the puck travel. So let the puck lead you where you want to go. And the body will automatically do things, which is, for example, separating the upper body from the lower body, or even more, having head in one position, upper body in one position, lower body in the other position. So maybe 3 different positions with hands, maybe reaching for the puck. So I always used it to work on edges, because once you put the puck on one side, you automatically, your weight is going to be on that side, on the inside edge. And then advancing into, escape moves, cutbacks, turnbacks, accelerations with the puck. But when the puck leads, it forces your body, if you have to reach for it, to do things that would be extremely difficult to do without the puck, and I think you would never do it. And actually, it leads to a movement that is more fluid and it's more instinctual than if I would have to walk you through and teach you the movement without the puck. One way to teach it, and again, there's players like or coaches like Darryl have a very detailed description for it. I used to do it instinctively. I didn't know, unconsciously. I would work with 2 or 3 pucks. I would have 1 puck in the feet, 1 puck or 2 pucks on the stick. And just by the way you had to move the puck and you have to keep 3 or 2 pucks constantly moving, you had to go into positions, extension, weight shift, peripheral vision, long reach with your top hand, and also being in very, very uncomfortable positions, yet that you would find in the game. So my players, the feedback of my players that I used to work with is that we have so much more confidence with the puck. And I did not work as Darryl does, where I've incorporated every single skill drill into a individual tactical situation. But I worked, like I said, more unconsciously, intuitively on things that I knew that the player will use it in the game instinctively, automatically, without thinking about it. And puck first is something that, I can recommend to any kind of a coach or a player, because they will be able to do things like, quick, tight turns when they are able to move the puck close to their feet. That would be very difficult to do without the puck.
Teaching skating via puck movement or puck touches, fascinating concepts there. I'm curious, what are maybe some other instinctual things that you taught that are elements that are automatically pretty much going to be recalled in many game situations, rather than teaching a skill and attaching it to a tactic, but more so your process of taking those skills that are going to be used and are going to be recalled very easily? Like, what are those? Give us maybe some examples for people who may not be aware of those.
Yeah, so some of the stuff that I did was, I thought that most players move, if you have the gears in the car and you have a first gear, second gear, third gear, fourth gear, fifth gear. I felt that most players were moving sort of at the third gear, maybe sometimes 4, maybe sometimes 2, but very little was ever done very, very slow. And very, very little was done at the highest possible pace. So I was trying to use the number 1 gear and number 5th gear very often and interchangeably, because if you think about it, some of the drills, like edge work and skating on 1 foot and handling the puck, if you pick up some speed, it becomes quite easier. If you have to do it extremely slow at a slow motion level, it's very difficult to do. And I always thought, if you can do it super slow, and by the way, I've learned this from other sports. I've learned it from skiing, I learned it from swimming, and I learned it from tennis. That to be able to execute something very, very well, I wanted my players to be doing it at extremely slow, almost slow motion pace. And then picking up speed, of course, and picking up the pressure and adding elements to it, and then being able to do it at the highest speed. Back then it was called overspeed, where they actually fail and they fall down and they lose the puck. So we knew that we were touching at the threshold when they were losing the puck, when they were losing the edges. But sort of the combination between, let's do some drills with long extensions, with maybe escape moves, or maybe fake a shot and push out, or fake a shot and pull in, and heel to heel situations with the feet. But let's do it super slow so that you can actually feel the movement and experience the movement. When I do it too fast, I don't feel anything. And I do it sort of at the third, fourth, I don't feel the proper movement and I don't feel the mistakes. And when you slow it down, and it's extremely uncomfortable for most players because all their life they've been going, let's go, hard feet, quick feet, let's jump on the pucks. So slowing it down was very, very important for me. And by the way, it was also great for a warm-up. I remember in Florida when I was with the Florida Panthers, Jacques Martin allowed me the first 15 minutes of every practice. And the first 5 minutes of the 15 minutes were always very deliberate, very slow, 1 foot skating, shift your weight, where's the puck, bottom hand, sliding on the stick, long reach, 360 degrees around your bodies. And then we picked up the speed. And the comment that was by all players and the coaches, the practice had a better quality because the players were properly warmed up, not only with their bodies, but also with their mind and with the nervous system. And I think we missed that element. And I am a big proponent, not the whole practice, but part of the practice, especially if the drill, if you cannot achieve something and the player is not getting the skill, do it slow and do it super slow. And it's like driving a Ferrari and you're driving 300 kilometers an hour. You don't feel anything on the road. You don't feel any rocks. You don't feel anything. But when you slow it down, you will feel every bump. And to me, feeling and experiencing the movement is very, very important. And therefore, I slowed it down quite a bit.
And that touches on the idea of field-based teaching, field-based learning, which I think is under talked about.
Field-based, absolutely, exactly, yes.
Yeah, because if you can't feel it truly in your body, is it really attached to what you're going to recall under serious competition or realistic situations that are going to be hard that you have to problem solve? So I'm curious maybe what your journey was with field-based learning. Was that something that came very intuitive to you, or is that something that you one day were like the glass smashes and you can't unfeel it or unsee it? I'm curious to get your ideas and thoughts around field-based learning, field-based teaching, because it's always a pet peeve of mine when I see a skating coach. You put your left foot here and I'll put your right foot there. I'm like, there's 0% chance that this is going to get recalled in an actual game situation.
Like I said, I felt it myself as an athlete because I had coaches in especially in tennis and then in swimming as well, and not so much in hockey, where they were field-based coaches. So I had to do as a tennis player certain action very, very, very slow until I got it, until I felt the ball, until I was able to do it perfectly. At repetition 20 times, 30 times, 50 times. And I was able to do it at a slow pace. So I immediately took it to hockey when I was even a beginner and like in the late 90s. And players and coaches and parents were sort of wondering if it's going to help the players because, hockey is such a fast game. You should be doing everything fast and at a high pace. So it came to me absolutely intuitively. What I have added as a coach is what you mentioned. I started asking questions. So how does this feel for you? And I was not happy with like, oh, it feels good or it feels bad. It's like, okay, does it feel soft? Does it feel fast? Does it feel, uncomfortable? Like I wanted detailed description from the players. How does this feel? And we took it even further with skating, where when I had problems with players, including Jerome and other top players, when we had tough time getting them on the edges, we started to loosen the laces and skate with loose skates. So what does it do if you have a loose skate? Now suddenly you have to really truly balance your foot in the skate, but you feel your edges way better. You never feel as good edges as if you have loose skates. And so I had players spending 60 minutes the whole practice with loose skates, just skating, maybe then slowly, and then backwards and forwards and pivoting and 1 foot skating and with the puck. And Jerome has progressed to a point where he didn't want to tie up his skates, even when we were doing 1-on-1s, 2-on-1s, 2-on-2s. And he actually changed the way he ties his skates. After the summer we spent with untied skates, he would tie the skates for games much, much looser than before. And he had a better feel. And again, that comes from skiing. One of the greatest skiers in the history of downhill, Franz Klammer. He was an Austrian skier. 1976, he won the Olympic gold, has many records, how many races he won. He always had a very, very soft boot. Most skiers have really stiff boots. In fact, he had a very soft boot. He said, I need to feel the snow. I need to feel my edges. And so there is a interaction with the equipment as well. And I find skaters with very stiff boot don't have as much feel for the ice as players who have it a little softer and tied up a little bit looser so that they can have a more natural knee bend and feeling the edges. So to me, it's same thing with gloves. When we talk about gloves, field-based training. So if you see the little kids, they can hardly move their glove. The glove is so stiff. And then the palm of the glove has 2 layers on it. So that was the first thing I was doing with my players. I was like, no, you got to redo this and have only 1 layer. The parents were not too happy. It was expensive. And then the hole in the glove was, after 20 practices, there was a hole in the glove. But when you have a soft layer, you feel the stick way better. And you have a better feel for the puck. So it doesn't, just go into how do you feel. Same with shin pads, same with pants. How long are the shin pads? Are they actually impeding? And today I'm still looking at the NHL, and I would be like, this guy could have a little shorter shin pads or a little bit, maybe not as wide, maybe a little thinner. It would make him a better skater. I know it's a personal preference, but it impacts the way you feel the ice, the feel you move, feel the motion, you feel the crossovers, you feel the edges, and same with the stick. So I don't know if I have answered your question, but it's feeling was what I was about, was always about how does this feel? What is, when the puck is beside your body on the forehand in the shooting position, how does this feel when you have top hand here? So a lot of the things that I was teaching the players were extremely uncomfortable. So there needed to be a huge trust between us to say, okay, I'm going to do what Tomas is saying. And I was not a ex-NHL player that would automatically have respect of players. I need to gain it by what I was teaching and by my relationship to the players.
This is fascinating conversation. One of the first things when I entered out into the blogosphere or the Twitter sphere, whatever you want to call it, was all around loose top laces, either not having them or you tie the top one but not the second one. And I remember a story when I was young. Mario Lemieux used to skate without his skates tied in his house. He would literally kick the skates off.
Yes.
They were that loose, which I thought was absolutely fascinating. So when I learned that, I remember going out to the local rink. It's just like a free skate, and literally would just threw the skates on, didn't tie them up at all, and went skating. And I was just like Bambi out there, just finding my way. But eventually, the muscles develop, you get the control, and then the feel you have of your edges is so advanced. It's unbelievable. So I would highly suggest that. And then with your glove issue, I've actually recommended to a few parents with the youngest ages, especially because the sticks and pucks are not being shot that hard. So this is a little more acceptable because there's less padding, but using lacrosse gloves, because you can literally do all 5 fingers separately, no worries. You can really get the feel for the puck, the glove, how your hands are moving. So maybe not for the older kids where those pucks are a little bit harder, the slashes are a little bit stronger, but lacrosse gloves are an excellent piece to understanding the feel and the range of the motion and building up those little muscles and groups that you probably don't think about, but are absolutely vital to performance. I loved also how you mentioned the shin pads. I don't know how many kids have way too long shin pads where it's like you can't even bend at your ankle, let alone your knee due to this.
Yeah. And
That's
then you
your
look at players who are exceptional skaters. I remember in Pittsburgh, I was watching every day Chris Letang. And Chris Letang has very short shin pads. It's almost dangerous because you could see his leg on the side. I was like, if you ever get a puck there, you will have a broken leg. But it's no coincidence that the great skaters, if you look at their shin pads, and also about tongue in, tongue out, and if you have the tongue of the skate outside or inside, I think it impacts the way you skate. But obviously, I respect everybody's preferences. But there is also a big element that I don't think we speak about or practice, and that is the element of experimentation. So we come in as coaches and say, okay, this is how you do it. This is the better way to do it. And I'm going to teach you the better way. But in between, there is a room where for the player to really own the new movement, that the new movement is truly his or hers, it needs to be experimented. So, okay, so how does my shot feel when my hand is here? How does my shot feels when it's here? When I grab the bottom hand and put it to the blade, how does that feel? And really go through extremes. And the same with skating. How does it feel when I'm bent over like that? How does it feel when I'm there? And I think we go way too quickly to, this is how it needs to be. And then we stay there and we try to get from here to there without this experimentation. And I just find the experimentation is and research. Like, let the player research, where does it, maybe it's a little bit more here. Maybe it's not what the coach thinks. Maybe it's not what I believe is the right thing. Maybe there's a little space in between where the player needs to figure it out. There's got to be, wow, I really feel good when the top or bottom hand is here, or when I don't know, jump, or how do you call it, the punch turn. When how far do I open that foot on a punch there? It's extremely important, but it's got to come out from him. Like if I open it like that, well, the turn is going to be like this. If I go extremely well, the tight turn is going to be like this. But let him or let her, give him time to experiment. And so in Portland, you would see as I advanced more and more, we would work on skills. And there would be always a time where I would say, guys, okay, next 3 minutes on your own. And I said to the coaches, no feedback, let them be, and let them try the moves on their own. So let's say we were working on escape move, backhand fake, forehand escape, crossover. Just guys, you on your own, with the puck, without the puck, with part, do whatever you want. And you would just see how, without the coach actually be there watching them and giving them feedback, how the movement has relaxed, how the movement has eased up, become more fluent, become more part of the player. Because the coach is not, hey, you got to do it, hey, good job, or do this a little bit more, let the puck go this way. It's so when I'm there constantly, the player has no space, no time. So I find in every session there should be, hey guys, 2 minutes on your own, 3 minutes on your own. And I would do it quite often. And the longer I did, the more I incorporated and had more trust from the players, because they knew, okay, Tomas is going to show us the optimum, but he will also allow me to make it my own. And I think every player is a little bit different, just physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And I think that will be expressed in the movement. So the movement is not going to look the same in every single player. But as a coach, that's where I have advanced the most. I'm giving players and coaches now, when I mentor them, space and time to just work on your own, experiment with it, try it.
Yeah, I feel like that's the absolute key and like the linchpin in a lot of this is being able to make it your own, giving that space. Whenever you're mentoring people, like asking a question and stepping back and just doing absolutely nothing, which takes a lot. Because everyone in this world is like, I got to do something. Well,
Yeah.
sometimes doing nothing is the best thing to do, and that can be a conscious choice. And I think on the other side of that is giving the permission to players, to people to do that. Because when you first give that to people, they will look at you sideways and be like, what? They just, I mean, especially with a lot of today's children, there's so much structure and every little part of their day is accounted for. Like they don't know how to handle it. Like it's very awkward. That's one of my things when I think that there's a lot of mental health issues is people aren't having the time to think and relax and process things. And I think when it comes to teaching hockey or whatever subject, having that permission from the authority or just that space is so crucial to making it your own, like you said, to make that happen. And I'm curious, I think this will perfectly dovetail into the work you did with the Czech women's program about giving permission to them to play a different way or even like break stigma that was in the Czech Republic and giving those permissions because it's something that needs to be consciously done by leadership, authority, mentor, whatever situation you're talking about where you have the ability to have the influence.
By far the hardest thing I've ever done, definitely. And I have to give incredible credit to the women and to the girls that I've been coaching, how receptive they were and how ready they were to play differently and to change the way the game has been perceived in Czech Republic. And so, you have to see that the way we found the girls and the game was played was relying on the goaltender and relying on few skilled players who were able to score. The game has happened along the boards, chip it in, chip it out, D to D up to the wall. Many times the puck has, that was for sure when you look at them, the way they played, it was like move the puck, but they were moving it into players who were not open. So when Darryl and I looked at some of the videos from the past championship, that was the first thing was like, just a simple way that in a team sport, you pass it to the player who is open. It sounds so rudimentally simple, but very difficult. Find the open player. You cannot move the puck if she's not open. You got to keep it. The girls had incredible skill, but the skill was not utilized. And we came in with the premise that we want to dominate. And they were looking at me like, what do you mean? Like, we are only like 3 or 4 years in the A pool and we were relegated from the A pool and we came back to the A pool. So we were always said, we were always told like, let's not get relegated again. Let's not lose too much. And so we came with a different premise. And of course, that has been very difficult just because of what they were used to. And also how the game was perceived from other people from the outside. I never found out as much as here when you're a national team coach. You're not just coaching the team, you're just coaching everyone basically. And not everyone is going to be inclined to what you were trying to incorporate. So you're sort of fighting a little bit of the old establishment. But at the end of the day, the way the girls have played, and I just did a presentation to Wally Kozak and his Sharks group, and I looked through all the videos, and the way they played in the offensive zone and the way they played on the entries, exits, the way they were able to change their own mindset was incredible. It was absolutely beyond anything I've ever seen. And really, everybody's asking me, how did I do it? Well, it was it was the girls who did it. They showed the openness and the willingness, and they have embraced it. And I'm sure Carla McLeod, who's going to continue, will accomplish tremendous things with this team, because they were within 2 years and COVID years. Really, that everybody has to see that we didn't have not many exhibition games, not too many camps, because everyone's canceled. All we had was important games, World Championships, Olympic qualifiers, and Olympic games. And in between, maybe 6 or 8 exhibition games against not that strong of opponents. And so when I look back at what the girls were able to do and the way they played, and you look at the stats, the only game we had negative puck possession time was against the United States, who dominated against us in the quarterfinals. But every other games, including Finland, we were at the 60%, 65, 70% puck possession. And we didn't win all the games. And that's maybe the only thing that, of course, I regret or look back at. We didn't score on our opportunities. And one of the reasons probably was because a lot of players were in huge 100% scoring chances that were not used to be in those positions. So, of course, they were D-men, they were left wingers, because the way we played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 put people into scoring positions that they never faced in 20 years, 25 years of their hockey career. So you look at, wow, if we would have scored on this, we would have won probably most or all of the games because we had the scoring chances to do so. But, when I talked with Darryl, it was like, yeah, but the players who were in those scoring chances were not used to it. So it takes years, not only to change the mindset and the way you play, but then also to back it up through success and results.
Well, I would love to say that everyone should go and check out how your women played, your girls played. It was absolutely stunning to watch. I remember watching a clip, and I had to take this clip because it was just too perfect. It was against Japan, which I believe you helped at some point as well. But there was a player climbing the wall, so they're getting up the wall, and both people who were at the point, so your normal defensive positions, both just left it and went into the zone, and then the person who was net front climbed back up to take the weak side defensive positions. You've got puck carrier coming up the wall, kind of becoming the strong side defense, and someone from the net becoming the weak side D, and both people at the point just leaving it, which I think most coaches would be tearing their hair out watching it. Most observers would, but I was absolutely fascinated on what you and your team were able to do and how you created offense. Every coach who thinks they know offense should go watch it because it was absolutely fascinating. I think the game against Japan was a rough one. Like, you absolutely dominated and then come down and get the one. You're like, but it should not have happened, but absolutely fascinating. So I just want to tip my cap to you and what you and your team, obviously they're the ones playing, actually making it happen, did and should shape the game for many years to come, because it was absolutely way above the curve, on the cutting edge of what hockey is going to become, I would say.
Yeah, and the really huge credit to all the girls, what they have accomplished. And I am hopeful, and I believe that they will get the medals and results that they deserve. And it was probably too soon. It's a process. It's not, one thing is to play like that, and the other thing is to back it up through results and to win consistently. The game against Denmark was the same thing. We had 6, not breakaways, but we were 6 times in front of the goalie by ourselves in the third period, lost the game 3-2. But that's all part of the learning, and the psychological part, emotional part, spiritual part is part of it, is very much underrated. And I realized, that not only you need to play fantastic hockey, but it has to be backed up through relationships and through communication. And Dave King wrote in his latest book, that sometimes our biggest strengths could become our biggest weaknesses. And that happened to me and my performance. I always thought communication and understanding of the players is my strength, and certainly it was not at the Olympic Games. And I made some mistakes in communications and the way I approached the team. It doesn't matter why, but it just happened. So that was a huge learning, that things that never happened in my 33-year coaching career happened at the Olympic Games. It just tells you that we are never done learning and never done working on ourselves and advancing ourselves emotionally, mentally, and spiritually.
Absolutely. And there's a process to everything, right? And you talk about the process of going through and evolving this team and teaching a ton with video, because COVID kept canceling every ice session, it seemed like, or every camp you guys had, which again, what your group accomplished is absolutely amazing. And we could talk about process, but I think I want to dive into maybe something a little bit more than the process itself. Is more so about the process of the mentality, the process that went into you being able to openly talk with your team about not fearing that we may not make the Olympics, or not even thinking about that, or the idea of detaching, how they perform in a game and their practices from their self-worth, and being able to become responsible for your own life and truly change an entire group. And I would say even change an entire country, because there was a moment where the men's national team was playing and the women's national team was playing at the exact same time. And I want to say that the women's team had 500,000, the men's had a lot less than that. So I think that would be curious to hear from you and your perspective around being able to shape that mentality, being very open to talk about not fearing, detaching self-worth from your sport, all of that.
I said many times that if I look back at my own life, I've been always inspired by many different people, and women and men in the history, whether it was actors, singers, athletes, politicians, my father. And so when I took the job, I knew that we will need something more than just Tomas Pacina. We will need somebody who is a true inspiration and left a true legacy. And I was extremely inspired by a lady called Milada Horáková, who was a politician, a social worker in the 30s in Czech Republic. And she always advanced human rights. And she was not even a feminist. She just wanted to make sure that all people have the same rights and same spot in society, and have equal opportunity to do their best they can do in their lives. And she was imprisoned by the Nazis for 4 years in a concentration camp, and was came back from the concentration camp. And obviously communists took, after the Second World War, they took over here, and they were also not happy with her, because she advanced all human rights, not just the communistic rights. So they have imprisoned her for a year or two, and then finally they killed her, and in a trial that was basically fabricated. And what was so inspiring about her is that she never wavered. She always had the same idea, same belief, and she stood by it no matter what, no matter of 4 years of concentration camp, no matter of being imprisoned by the Czechs. And she had an opportunity, the communists gave her an opportunity to leave to England and write books or join the Communistic Party. She said no. And she knew that it's going to end with her death. She knew that. But she said, I'm a Czech, and those are my beliefs, and I will die by that. And so she had there's an incredible book about her, and I had everybody, even coaching staff, read the book. And it was a very dark book. Like there's details about the concentration camps, and there's details about her family. She had kids, and her kids had to live with her sister because she was in a prison. And then we had a team building exercise before the World Championships, where we had units of 5 discussing the book and then presenting to the whole team what it means, what it meant to them, and how they saw the book. And it was interesting how some girls were like, like she was a mother, she maybe could have pushed a little bit less on the political side, and she could have looked after her family. And some of the girls were inspired by not ever wavering for what you believe in. And I thought it was so important to us that we are Czech Republic, we are a Czech national team, and this is how we play the game of hockey, and this is our game. And by the way we play it, no matter what happens, this is our game, and we're going to stick to it. That was the whole idea. And the girls, looking back at it, the World Championships, we lost 1-0 with in a quarterfinal game against Finland, who a couple of years before was in the finals, got the silver medal in overtime against the US, was one of the best teams in the world. And we played our game. Like, we had 58% of puck possession, 842. It was an even game. But the Finnish coach said it was the best game in history of women's hockey between 2 European teams. That says something. That says something, that the girls got the message. We didn't get the luck, but they certainly got the message. And then when we qualified for the Olympics for the first time in history, the game against Hungary, which was the last game, on paper, yes, we were favorites, but we also had the pressure of not qualifying 3 times to the Olympics, playing in front of our own fans in Czech Republic, being in the role of the favorite, having to win, must win. And Hungary, who has been extremely well coached by Lisa Haley, Canadian coach, who has a gold medal from the Sochi Olympics with Canada. And so I knew how difficult it's going to be. And yes, many people from the outside say, oh, this is an easy draw, it's not very difficult. But for me, it was one of the most difficult tournaments. And the way the girls played that game was the most perfect played game I've ever been part of. We won 5-1 and scored at the right times and did the right things at the right time. Never seen a better performance. And one of the coaches and Czech coaches who won a gold medal in Nagano wrote me a beautiful message on the phone. He says, like, it looked like you were never burdened by the pressure of the moment. And it's the greatest compliment you can ever get as a coach or as a player. It didn't look like you were burdened by the pressure of the moment. I will never forget it. It's the greatest compliment I've ever gotten as a coach, as a leader, and the girls as a team. We were unable to replicate that at the Olympic Games for many reasons. And like I said, my performance at the Olympic Games was subpar for sure in the department where I thought I was very strong, and I was not very strong at the Olympics. But the going back to Milada Horáková, having something that is beyond ourselves, having the connection to something higher than ourselves, is where the connection is and where we are able to perform at a different level. And I think the girls really got it.
That is stunning. I have so many questions left, and there's no way we're going to get to it in one episode. So if you don't mind, I'm going to invite you back for round 2 of this. I think we can dive in deeper. But I would love to end the episode on that note that you weren't burdened by the pressure of the moment, because I think there's nothing higher than that as well. That is absolutely fascinating and stunning that you were able to get that from a fellow peer coach hopefully it was someone you looked up to as well, because that would be extra special. So I will leave the floor open for 2 minutes here before we come back another day and make this second episode, because there's so much more to dig into, and I really appreciate you taking the time, and hopefully some time off will do you well and help you recover in the best ways possible and be able to reflect and continue to grow, as I know that is very important to you.
Thank you so very much. And it's been a really introspective time now, with being able to speak with you and speak with Wally and his group, and the coaching side, the coaches side. It helps to dissect everything and to heal, and to look back and see what the girls were able to accomplish was something maybe we will come to appreciate maybe in years to come.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tomas. Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers.
That concludes this week's episode. Thanks for joining us here at Hockey IQ. If you haven't already, take a quick moment to hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and drop a review. If you want to be a great teammate, even recommend us to a friend. You can follow us at Hockey's Arsenal on Twitter and Instagram. Check out the website, hockeysarsenal.com, where you can subscribe to the weekly newsletter. You won't regret it. Catch you beauts here next week for a brand new episode.